Hey guys, so I've been seeing a few comments of people wondering why I wear bandanas in all of my videos, and I didn't initially plan on acknowledging this at first, but it's gotten to the point where I'm being accused of hiding something, so I think it's time to come clean. Cat's out of the bag. Before I get into this, major spoiler warnings for the entirety of the Jujutsu Kaisen manga. If you haven't read it yet or are waiting for it to be animated, now is your time to go. Okay, I love you. Bye. So, Jujutsu Kaisen finally wrapped up a few days ago. Twitter has been in shambles with Gojo cope. The discords and subreddits have devolved into even more brain rot than they already were. Shout out to the one Discord that has the vanilla cake recipe bot. That got me. That was funny. I'm going to be talking about JJK as if you're familiar with all the plot points because I assume that you're only watching this video if you are. I think that throughout the manga, Gege Akutami did a lot of things right. But that ending, man, oh lord, that ending. It was something. It just left me with a lot of mixed feelings. Twitter's going crazy right now though. Twitter was not having it. This meme sums up my feelings on how it ended pretty well. To avoid being a massive hater, I am going to start with something that I really liked. One of the redeeming things about JJK from start to finish was Yuji's development. I'm going to give you like the super quick SparkNotes version, because I'm sure you all already know this. When we first meet Yuji, he's a pretty normal kid, at least by shonen standards. He's really strong, but normal. And he has no clear direction in his life. His primary motivation is to fulfill his grandfather's dying wish, to help people and to live a life with purpose. That's the initial drive that pushes Yuji into the world of Jujutsu sorcery and why he ate the first of Sukuna's fingers. Yuji's early encounters with the Jujutsu world and with cursed spirits pretty quickly force him to confront the harsh reality of death. The naive idealism he went into this with is challenged as he watches innocent people suffer and realizing just how brutal cursed spirits can be. The most pivotal early moment is probably when he failed to save his friend Junpei and had to fight Mahito for the first time, because that was the moment that he realized just wanting to help wasn't always going to be enough. And then on top of that, Yuji's role as the vessel for Sukuna, the king of curses, is a really tricky situation. Because on one hand, he's granted this immense power, but it comes with such a monumental burden of housing a literal demon. So he has to deal with the fear that he might lose control to Sukuna and cause great amounts of harm, which causes him to question his own self-value. And then the Shibuya incident goes down. He is forced to confront every single one of his worst fears in the most horrifying way possible when Sukuna levels Shibuya. During the entire Shibuya incident arc, his ideals are repeatedly crushed as he has to grapple with the futility of his efforts. The weight of the death of one of his closest friends and one of his mentors drives him to moments of self-loathing. At this point, he's wondering why even continue to fight. This is his rock bottom. After Shibuya, we begin to see him accept that his situation is inherently intertwined with pain and loss, but also an unignorable obligation. He isn't the same innocent kid he was at the beginning of the story, but his motivations remain unchanged and his purpose seems clearer than ever. He still had his humanity, but gained a more pragmatic approach to surmounting his challenges. What he comes to realize at this point is that he is just a cog in a machine, and that there are more parts to this than what he can simply offer. That what he's doing is larger than himself. It's not solely up to him to defeat Sukuna and Kenjaku. But then, towards the end of the manga, when he traps Sukuna in his domain, I think we see the end result of his character arc. He found that meaning that he was searching for the whole time, but it wasn't in fulfilling any specific role. He came to the conclusion that life inherently has meaning, even in the most mundane of moments. To live a life at all is to live with purpose. His words to Sukuna in chapter 265 were, "Roles like walking the dog or providing for a family, none of that really matters. Even if there were no such roles and you just eat, shit, and sleep, or if you're bedridden with illness and your life is disconnected from everyone else and leaves nothing behind, even if only small fragments of memories are drifting around, a person's life still holds value beyond the memories that create their identity." It was a heartbreaking series of events that led him to this conclusion, but I think it was necessary. As far as shonen protagonists go, I think he was very well written. Let's talk about Gojo. As for Gojo, I'm gonna go ahead and give my main point off the jump. I am very relieved that they didn't bring him back. But damn, nearly everything that happened after his unsealing I just found to be very iffy. His character development was just so good up until that point. They kind of redeemed it a little bit in the last chapter, but I still think it was wasted potential. I do think he got the death he deserved, and I don't mean that in a bad way at all. This was canonically the best way for him to go. He shared a similar sentiment to that in chapter 236. Dying at the hands of Sukuna was probably going to be the most human that he would ever get to feel. From the day he was born, Satoru Gojo was treated as more of a god than a person. His entire personality is tied to him being the strongest sorcerer of the modern era. And I think you see this manifested in this unmatched aura that he has, even in the face of grave circumstances. But in addition to a god, he is seen as a means to an end. A tool in the Jujutsu world meant to keep things in check. The Shibuya incident was probably the first time Gojo really had to confront his limitations. Not in his power per se, but in the belief that his sheer existence alone was enough to deter any threat. There was also when he lost to Toji during Hidden Inventory, but I'm not going to count that because he came back on this massive ego trip and blew a hole through him. Actually, let's talk about Hidden Inventory for a second. During that arc, when Gojo and Geto go their two separate paths, Geto asks him the big question. I think that the answer to this changed throughout the story. In his youth, he was Gojo because he was the strongest. His entire upbringing revolved around his technique, and that's why he was so cocky. Bro was just being glazed by everyone all the time. But then after Geto leaves and a lot of shit goes down, that cockiness transforms into more of a confidence. He continued his training, he took students under his wing, and somewhere along the way, it switched and he was the strongest because he was Satoru Gojo. The moment that this point was really proven, in my opinion, was when Yuta took over his body during the fight against Sukuna and got essentially nothing done. I do think there was something beautifully tragic about that, Yuta using Gojo's body. Because even in death, Gojo can't seem to escape his fate as a tool for the Jujutsu world. That said, this could just be a personal opinion, but I think they should have spent a little more time with Yuta and Gojo's body. I understand that there was a time limit, but it felt almost inconsequential in terms of the whole story, when it was supposed to be this big moment. I have more feelings about Yuta that I'll get into later, but we're talking about Gojo right now, so back to Gojo. We see his relationship with his confidence wrap up in the last chapter when he expresses that he has complete faith in his students surpassing his abilities. But we only get that through the form of a 2-page flashback between him and Yuji. And that ties into my biggest gripes with how his character was handled. Gojo was sealed for almost 100 chapters, gets unsealed, dies a handful of chapters later, and nobody even acknowledged it. He wasn't grieved at all. He wasn't even mentioned. The letters that Megumi and Nobara got in chapter 268 felt like a joke. There was no impact there for the characters or for the reader. Especially considering the fact that Gojo was basically a father figure to Megumi, we'd think you would see something. I get that losing people is part of the job when it comes to being in the JJK universe, but damn, it didn't feel right. Okay, yeah, I'm in full hater mode now, so let's talk about some of the things that I really did not like. These are all just my opinion, so if you disagree with me, that's fine. But for one, I found the pacing of the Shinjuku showdown to be brutal. I wasn't sure if that was just me being impatient with the weekly releases, so I went back and reread it and I still feel the same way. I understand that it was supposed to be this epic, long-winded battle between good and evil, but good lord, was it tough to get through at times. I did really enjoy the Kenjaku fight though, with him and Takaba and Yuta. That was good. I don't mind that. But with Sukuna, it just felt like it got to the point where Gege was rotating sorcerers in and out to buy himself time because he didn't know how he wanted to wrap things up. I just think that the pacing could have been done so much better, and it cost us things like the Hikari versus Urame fight. I know that it wouldn't have contributed much narratively to include the fight, but come on, we could have gotten like one chapter, you know? Just one. And another thing about the Sukuna fight, I didn't enjoy how heavily Gege relied on flashbacks to explain everything that was going down. We should have gotten at least a little more preparation before the fight started so that not everything just felt like an ass pull. A lot of the concepts were really cool, like Wee using his technique to switch bodies. That was awesome. But I just personally would have liked it more if we got some breadcrumbs to these events before the fight started. Obviously not everything. Like, we shouldn't have known about Yuta using Gojo's body because that would have spoiled his death, that would have spoiled a lot that was very cool to witness happening real time. That shock value was fine. I'm okay with that. But at least some of it should have been hinted at so that it didn't feel like it was coming out of complete nowhere, you know? It just didn't feel planned out at all. I don't expect everyone to agree with this next critique, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I think that more people should have died. The two that really come to mind are, I don't think that Nobara should have come back, and I don't know if Yuta should have made it. Don't get me wrong, I love both of those characters, but so many people survived that fight that it feels as though the stakes were invalidated. Rest in peace, my boy Choso, though. That was sad. You know what? Yuta didn't even have to die, I guess. But I think that we should have gotten some more tension before he was like, oh yeah, no, I'm fine, Rika brought me back, we're all good. And also, talking about Rika, her ability to just pull Yuta back into his body came out of nowhere. Like, I understand that she's the queen of curses and she can do all these crazy things, but maybe we could have established some of her power boundaries before stuff like this just happens. For the sake of my piece, I'm just gonna disregard it as shonen logic. It's fine. It's fine. I'm just being picky. One more big gripe that I have about the ending was, why are we world building at the very end? JJK has plenty of awesome world building throughout the series. But a lot of the stuff that they brought up in the last few chapters just felt unnecessary. Unless he's setting up for some sequel series, but he's made it clear that that's most likely not the case. The chapter that pissed me off the most was 269, the post-fight discussion. It is so important for a story to rely more on showing than telling, and almost the entirety of that chapter was just yap. And I could have let that slide if we were talking about things that just didn't feel so irrelevant. Maybe this is all just me, but I could care less about new shadow style and all of the crap surrounding that. Like, I did not need to know any of that. I really feel that that was time that should have been spent tying up loose ends instead of creating new ones. We could have talked about the merger some more, or the implications of what happened in Japan with the rest of the world, or literally anything else. I guess I'll wrap up my thoughts with a couple of things that I didn't love or hate. I just didn't really mind them. The possibility that Takaba brought back Kenjaku or Geto, or made a new Kenjaku/Geto to do comedy with, is pretty funny. I didn't hate that. Sukuna considering maybe taking a different path next time was fine. It felt very out of character, but very shonen, so. And I think that the final page was the most Gege thing that Gege could have done. This man hated his audience so much. He took one last chance to just flip all of us off. Dude, he got us there. Do I think that the ending deserved as much hate as I'm seeing on Twitter? No, probably not. I just think that it could have been done so much better. I'm trying to remind myself that I only feel as strongly about it as I do because JJK was such a fantastic story, and it was so hyped up that there was no way Gege was gonna write an ending that everybody was happy with. Jujutsu Kaisen will still probably be one of my favorite mangas. I'm just gonna forget the last 5 chapters ever happened and maybe the Shinjuku showdown, but it was one of those things that my friends and I would read every week and we'd have our little Gen Z weeb book club about. So it's important to me. I do have 2 questions for you guys though. Considering Sukuna's change of heart, what do you think would happen if someone were to eat that last finger? I say someone, but I specifically mean someone with the potential to be a vessel again. Like, not just some random kid that would eat it and die. That's not what I'm talking about. And the other question I had was, do you want to see a Jujutsu Kaisen sequel? I threw up a poll for some of my friends on Discord, and it wasn't a very big sample size, but we were completely evenly split. So I'm curious to know what you guys might think. Again, this was all just my own personal opinions. Take it with a grain of salt. If you want to see me do something like this again, let me know. I'm not leaning towards it, but this was just something that was on my mind a lot the last couple of weeks, so I wanted to make a video about it. I'll catch you guys later. What did you think about how JJK ended, Bebo? I don't think she was impressed. Say bye. Bye bye.